The conquerors arrive. The vast warship Eternal Subjugation sliced through the darkness of space, its hull gleaming under the light of Earth's distant sun. Commander Xerxes stood on the observation deck, his four eyes fixed on the blue-green planet displayed on the holographic projector before him. His scaled skin rippled with anticipation as he clasped his clawed hands behind his back. "Another primitive world for the glory of the Vraxian Empire," he said, voice like grinding metal. Preliminary scans. Science Officer Tekla approached, her movements fluid and precise. Class 3 civilization, Commander. Nuclear capabilities, limited space travel confined to their system. Their military technology is primitive by our standards. Nothing we haven't seen and conquered a dozen times before. Xerxes nodded, the ridged crest on his head catching the purple light of the command center. Population centers. Concentrated on coastal regions and temperate zones, Tekla replied, manipulating the hologram to highlight clusters of human settlements. They call themselves humans, bipedal mammals with moderate physical capabilities, but apparently advanced problem-solving skills. Psychological profile. That's where it gets interesting, Tekla said, her tone shifting slightly. They're exceptionally social creatures, strong familial and community bonds. All our conquered species exhibit such traits to some degree, but these humans seem particularly attached to their young. Xerxes' mouth stretched into what passed for a smile among the Vraxians, a terrible sight of jagged teeth and tensed facial muscles. Perfect. The standard protocol should be highly effective. Then, the Vraxian Empire had expanded across 3 star systems through a brutally efficient strategy. Rule by fear. The protocol was simple. Target a moderately populated area with minimal defenses. Execute a devastating first strike with high civilian casualties. Broadcast the carnage to the planet's communication networks. Make demands. The pattern always ended the same way. Compliance born of terror. War Commander Krex strode onto the deck, his massive frame towering even over Xerxes. The ceremonial scars crisscrossing his face testified to the dozens of worlds he had helped subjugate. Assault teams are prepped and ready, Commander, Krex reported, his voice a deep rumble. 200 shock troops with standard subjugation loadout. Dropships fueled and waiting your command. And the broadcast systems, Xerxes asked. We've tapped into their global communication networks. Communications Officer Vren interjected. We can override their signals at your command. Every screen on their planet will show our demonstration. Xerxes zoomed the holographic display to focus on a coastal settlement, a city of approximately 100,000 humans called New Harbor. It featured minimal military presence and was far enough from major power centers to give the humans time to contemplate their response before their governments could react. This will be our target, Xerxes declared. We strike at their local dawn. There's something psychologically devastating about terror arriving with the morning light. Krex flared his nostril slits in approval. The shock troops are eager, Commander. It's been 3 cycles since our last conquest. They hunger for action. They'll have it soon enough, Xerxes replied. And this insignificant species will learn what so many before them have learned, that resistance against the Vraxian Empire leads only to extinction. As the command crew dispersed to their stations, Xerxes remained at the holographic display. He'd overseen 17 planetary conquests during his career. Each followed the same pattern: initial resistance, then acceptance of Vraxian dominance as the price of survival. The dropships would deploy in 6 hours. By this time tomorrow, humanity would be on its knees, leaders scrambling to surrender to save what remained of their species. It was practically a science at this point. Commander, Tekla approached again, her voice hesitant. There's something unusual in the human historical records. Unusual how? Xerxes asked, irritated at the interruption of his thoughts. They've never unified as a species. Their planet remains divided into nearly 200 sovereign territories. They've spent much of their history fighting each other. Xerxes waved a dismissive hand. That's common among primitive species. It makes them easier to conquer. They'll be too busy blaming each other to mount an effective resistance. Yes, but Tekla paused, searching for words. Their conflicts follow unusual patterns. When threatened, they sometimes unify temporarily against common enemies, and they fight with unexpected tenacity. All species fight for survival, Xerex replied. None have survived the Vraxian Empire. These humans will be no different. As the ship's artificial night cycle began, Xerex retired to his quarters. Looking out at the blue planet below, he felt only the calm certainty of routine conquest. In 27 subjugated worlds, not once had the Empire's strategy failed. These humans, with their fragile bodies and primitive weapons, would soon join the long list of species who existed only to serve the greater glory of Vraxia. What Xerex couldn't know was that in less than a planetary rotation, the name of this insignificant blue world would become a curse among his people. That Earth would become synonymous with the fall of an empire. That humans would rewrite the rules of interstellar conquest in ways the Vraxian Empire could never have anticipated. The first dropships began their descent through Earth's atmosphere 6 hours later, cloaked by stealth fields that rendered them invisible to human detection systems. Commander Xerex watched from the bridge as the tactical display showed his forces approaching New Harbor under cover of early dawn. Ground teams deployed, Krex reported, establishing containment perimeter. Excellent, Xerex said. Prepare the demonstration strike. And remember, I want survivors. Enough to spread the terror. Enough to tell the others what happens when the Vraxians arrive. The first explosions bloomed across New Harbor's city center, precise strikes designed to maximize terror rather than tactical advantage. On the screens, thermal signatures of human bodies scattered in panic. Xerex leaned forward, anticipating the familiar pattern. Initial shock, disorganized resistance, then submission. The first phase of another successful conquest for the eternal glory of the Vraxian Empire. He had no way of knowing that this routine operation was about to become the Empire's greatest mistake. First contact gone wrong. The sun rose over New Harbor as screams echoed through the streets. Vraxian shock troops moved methodically through the city, their scaled bodies and tactical armor making them appear as monsters to the terrified humans. On the eternal subjugation, Commander Xerex watched through helmet cameras as his soldiers secured key areas of the city. The operation was proceeding exactly as planned. Emergency services were overwhelmed. Local law enforcement, armed with primitive projectile weapons, posed no threat to Vraxian battle armor. Sir, Communications Officer Vren called out, I'm detecting unusual patterns in human communications. Their global information networks are spreading news of our attack faster than anticipated. Perfect, Xerex replied. Fear travels fastest through information. Begin the broadcast override. It's time to make our demonstration. Squad leader Trazik led his team toward a structure identified as an educational facility. Intelligence suggested it would be filled with young humans at this hour, ideal for demonstrating Vraxian ruthlessness. Proceed to capture, but do not terminate unless resistance is encountered, Xerex ordered over the comlink. We need one young specimen for the demonstration. Trazik acknowledged the order as his squad breached the building's entrance. Inside, they found clusters of small humans huddled behind larger ones, teachers protecting their students. The small ones. Trazik commanded his soldiers, take one. As a Vraxian soldier reached for a human child, a female with dark hair tied back from her face, one of the adult humans lunged forward protectively. The Vraxian, following standard protocol for resistance, fired his plasma disruptor. The blast caught both the adult and the child, vaporizing much of the child's upper body while severely wounding the adult. The child collapsed, instantly killed. Target neutralized, the soldier reported flatly. Proceeding with. The audio feed suddenly erupted with the sound of projectiles. Xerex watched in confusion as the soldier's camera feed jerked wildly before going static. Squad 7, report, he demanded. Trazik, respond. Lieutenant Krex's voice cut in, uncharacteristically tense. "Sir, we've lost contact with all of Squad 7. Local human reinforcements converged on their position immediately after the child's termination." "It's not a termination. It's standard subjugation procedure," Xerex snapped. "We've eliminated young specimens on dozens of worlds. It's statistically the most efficient path to compliance." "Sir," Communications Officer Vren interrupted, "the footage of the child's elimination is being broadcast worldwide, but not by us. The humans are sharing it through their own networks." "Perfect," Xerex said, waving a dismissive hand. "Let them see what happens to those who resist." "That's not all, sir," Vren continued, her tone suggesting she wasn't sharing good news. "We're detecting massive military mobilization across the planet, not just near our landing zone. Everywhere." The tactical display confirmed it. Military installations across the planet were awakening. Aerial vehicles were launching, ground transports were mobilizing, and all were converging toward New Harbor. "This is not the standard fear response," Science Officer Tekla noted, her voice clinical yet concerned. "In typical species, widespread evidence of our willingness to eliminate their young triggers submission, not aggression." Xerex stared at the tactical display, watching as more and more human forces activated. Something cold and unfamiliar settled in his gut as he realized a fundamental truth. They had gravely misunderstood this species. "Sir," Krex reported, "ground teams are requesting immediate extraction. The humans have changed. They're no longer fighting defensively. They're hunting our soldiers." The footage from the remaining helmet cameras confirmed this alarming development. Civilians were arming themselves alongside military personnel. They moved with purpose, coordinating through handheld devices, setting ambushes for Vraxian troops. A squad leader's voice crackled over the comm. "They're everywhere. They're using their own vehicles as weapons, driving them directly into our positions. Request immediate extraction." Xerex felt his certainty waver for the first time in his military career. This can't be happening. No species has ever responded this way. The protocol has never failed. 12 hours after the death of one human child, Earth had transformed. The humans weren't cowering in fear. They were unifying with terrifying speed. Vren's fingers danced across her console as she sorted through intercepted human transmissions. "Sir, I've never seen anything like this. Their global communication networks are unified in purpose. Military commands, civilian authorities, even individual citizens, they're all coordinating." The tactical display showed human forces converging on New Harbor from all directions. Air, land, sea. They were coming with everything they had. "The dropships," Xerex ordered, his voice tight. "Recall all ground forces immediately." "Sir," Krex objected, "a full withdrawal will be seen as weakness. If we don't withdraw, we'll lose every soldier on the ground." Xerex snapped. "Something is wrong with these humans. They're not following the pattern." As the extraction order went out, the humans seemed to sense the Vraxians' intent. The attacks intensified. 3 dropships were shot down by primitive, but surprisingly effective anti-aircraft fire before they could reach the extraction points. On the bridge of the eternal subjugation, the atmosphere had changed from confident conquest to growing concern. Officers exchanged uneasy glances as reports flooded in of mounting Vraxian casualties. "Sir," Tekla approached Xerex, her voice low. "I've been analyzing the human response. The death of the child wasn't just a tragedy to them. It was a trigger. Their protective instinct toward their young doesn't just extend to direct family units. It's species-wide." "That's not possible," Xerex argued. "No species values individuals they aren't genetically related to at such a level." "These humans do," Tekla insisted. "And there's more. They have a concept they call justice. When confronted with what they perceive as an unjust act, like the killing of a defenseless child, they don't submit out of fear. They unite in rage." As if to punctuate her assessment, alarms blared across the bridge. Multiple human aircraft approaching low orbit, a sensor officer reported. Primitive nuclear propulsion, but they're carrying what appear to be nuclear warheads. Xerax stared at the tactical display in disbelief. The humans were launching everything they had, not just at the ground forces, but at the Vraxian ships themselves. "This is unprecedented," he muttered. "We've conquered 27 worlds. No species has ever responded like this." "Sir," Krex urged, "we need to show them the consequences of defiance. Authorize orbital bombardment." For a moment, Xerax considered the option. The Vraxian ships could easily target human population centers from orbit, killing millions in minutes. But something stopped him, a realization that cut through his certainty like a blade. These humans, these supposedly primitive creatures, had accomplished in hours what no other species had managed. They had united against the Vraxian threat, and were fighting back with unexpected effectiveness. "No," Xerax decided. "Maintain position. Continue extraction of all remaining ground forces. We need to reassess." As the remaining dropships struggled to evacuate Vraxian troops under increasingly heavy fire, Xerax faced an uncomfortable truth. The standard conquest protocol, the foundation of Vraxian expansion, had failed completely. For the first time in Empire history, they would need to develop a new approach to subjugation. Or perhaps, a darker thought whispered at the edge of his mind, they would need to consider something previously unthinkable. Retreat. The unexpected resistance. 3 days after the New Harbor incident, Commander Xerax stood before the holographic display on the bridge of the Eternal Subjugation, watching with growing disbelief as reports of human counterattacks flooded in from across the planet. "Status report," he demanded, his voice strained. War Commander Krex stepped forward, his usual confidence noticeably diminished. "We've lost contact with 60% of our ground forces, sir. The humans have adapted to our armor and weapons with unparalleled speed. They're using their own communication networks to coordinate globally." "How?" Xerax demanded. "They're a fragmented species with primitive technology." Science Officer Tekla approached, data tablet in hand. "That's where we made our fundamental mistake, Commander. Their fragmentation wasn't a weakness, it was a strength. Their numerous cultures and military organizations have developed diverse approaches to warfare. Now they're sharing those approaches, adapting them specifically to combat our tactics." The display showed footage of human soldiers deploying modified weapons, primitive projectile guns now fitted with electromagnetic components that could penetrate Vraxian armor. "They've analyzed our technology and found weaknesses in less than 72 hours. Tekla continued. "Their scientists and engineers are working around the clock, sharing discoveries instantly through their global networks." Communications Officer Vren looked up from her station. "Sir, we've intercepted their communications. They're calling it Operation Childhood's End. Every human military force on the planet is now operating under a unified command structure." Xerax felt something he'd never experienced in his military career. Doubt. The Vraxian conquest doctrine was based on a single fundamental principle, that fear of overwhelming force would always lead to submission. But these humans weren't submitting. They were fighting back with unexpected ferocity and ingenuity. "And that's not all," Tekla added grimly. "Our psychological warfare tactics aren't just failing. They're backfiring catastrophically. The footage of the child's death has become a rallying point. They're using our own demonstration against us. On the main screen, human broadcasts showed the face of the dead child alongside images of Vraxian soldiers. The message was clear even without translation. This is why we fight. Launch additional dropships, Xerax ordered. We need to establish secure footholds. Krex shifted uncomfortably. Sir, the humans have adapted to our dropship signatures. The last 3 deployment attempts were intercepted before they reached the surface. They've modified their missile guidance systems specifically to target our stealth technology. That's impossible, Xerax insisted. Their technology is too primitive. Their individual technology may be primitive, Tekla said carefully, but their adaptability is unlike anything we've encountered. They're not just using their existing weapons, they're creating new ones specifically designed to exploit our weaknesses. The evidence was undeniable. Across the tactical display, red indicators showed Vraxian positions under attack. Green human forces moved with surprising coordination, cutting off supply lines and targeting command centers with precision strikes. "What about our orbital advantage?" Xerex demanded. "They can't reach us here." As if in answer to his question, alarms blared across the bridge. "Multiple launches detected," a sensor officer reported. "Primitive nuclear-tipped missiles, but they've modified the guidance systems. They're targeting our ships." "Impossible," Xerex breathed. "Their missiles can't penetrate our shields." "They're not trying to penetrate them directly," Tekla observed, studying the trajectory data. Her voice trailed off as realization dawned. "They're planning to detonate in proximity. The electromagnetic pulse from nuclear detonations in low orbit could temporarily disable our systems." "Evasive maneuvers," Xerex ordered. "Shoot down those missiles." The Vraxian fleet scattered, defense systems engaging the incoming human missiles. Most were intercepted, but 3 detonated close enough to the eternal subjugation to send a power surge through its systems. The lights flickered, and several consoles sparked. "Damage report," Xerex demanded once emergency power stabilized. "Shield generators at 60%, an engineer reported. Weapons systems temporarily offline. Communications disrupted." Xerex stared at the tactical display in stunned silence. In 3 days, these supposedly primitive humans had analyzed Vraxian technology, identified weaknesses, and developed countermeasures. It defied all previous conquest experience. "They shouldn't be capable of this," he said quietly. "No species has ever adapted so quickly." "Sir," Tekla said, her voice somber, "I believe we fundamentally misunderstood human psychology. Our conquest doctrine is based on the assumption that fear leads to submission. But for humans, the death of a child triggered something else entirely: unity through rage." Xerex watched as the tactical display updated, showing more human forces converging on remaining Vraxian positions. They were using their own casualties to identify Vraxian tactical patterns, then adapting accordingly. "Analyze all available data on human warfare," Xerex ordered. "I want to understand how they fight." Hours later, Tekla returned with her findings. "Commander, human military history is disturbing. They've spent thousands of years fighting each other. Their tactics are diverse and often seemingly irrational. They value individual initiative in a way that's completely foreign to Vraxian military doctrine. Meaning they're unpredictable," Tekla explained. "Vraxian troops are trained to follow precise protocols. Humans improvise. When our troops execute standard maneuvers, the humans adapt in real time. They're not fighting according to any doctrine we understand." A communications officer interrupted. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the surface. The humans are broadcasting on all frequencies, including our encrypted channels." "How did they crack our encryption?" Xerex demanded. "Unknown, sir, but the message is being transmitted in perfect Vraxian language." Xerex hesitated, then nodded. On screen, the holographic display shifted to show a human female in what appeared to be a military uniform. Behind her stood representatives of various human military organizations, their uniforms diverse, but their expressions unified in determination. "I am General Helena Chen, speaking on behalf of the United Earth Defense Council," the human began, her pronunciation of Vraxian surprisingly accurate. "You came to our world believing we would submit through fear. You were wrong." The camera panned to show captured Vraxian weapons and technology being studied by human scientists. "We have analyzed your capabilities," Chen continued. "We have adapted our defenses. For every Vraxian soldier that touches Earth's surface, 1,000 humans stand ready to fight. You killed our children. For that, there will be no forgiveness, no surrender, no negotiation. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge in silence. "How?" Xerix finally asked, his voice barely audible. "How did they learn our language? How did they breach our encryption?" Tekla studied the data flowing across her screen. They'd been capturing our soldiers, studying our technology. The speed at which they've done so is unprecedented. Krex stepped forward, his expression grim. "Commander, we must consider our options. The Conquest Protocol has failed. Standard doctrine offers no guidance for this situation." Xerix stared at the tactical display, watching as more Vraxian positions fell to human counterattacks. The unthinkable was happening. The Vraxian Empire, conquerors of 27 worlds, was losing. "Prepare a full report for High Command," Xerix ordered. "We need reinforcements. This species cannot be allowed to resist the Empire and live." As the message was prepared for transmission back to Vraxian space, Xerix couldn't shake a growing sense of dread. The humans had done more than resist. They had adapted. They were learning. And most disturbing of all, they showed no signs of fear. "Sir," Tekla said quietly, "I've been analyzing human historical records. When threatened as a species, they've demonstrated remarkable unity and determination. There's a phrase that appears repeatedly in their various languages when facing extinction-level threats. Never again." Xerix turned to her, his 4 eyes narrowing. "Meaning?" "Meaning," Tekla said grimly, "that the death of that child may have awakened something in this species that our conquest doctrine never accounted for. Humans don't just fight for survival. They fight for retribution." A lesson in humanity. 2 weeks after the New Harbor incident, Commander Xerix stood on the bridge of the eternal subjugation, facing a reality he could never have imagined. The holographic displays told a story that would have been dismissed as impossible just days ago. The Vraxian Conquest Force, veteran subjugators of 27 worlds, had been reduced to defensive positions around their remaining ships. "Status report," he demanded, though he already knew the answer. War Commander Krex, his scales dulled with exhaustion, stepped forward. "We've lost 80% of our ground forces, Commander. The remaining troops are pinned down in isolated pockets. Our air superiority is compromised. The humans have adapted their aircraft to target our vulnerabilities. And the fleet. 5 of our 14 ships have suffered critical damage from the humans' adaptive weaponry," Krex reported. "They're specifically targeting our propulsion and weapons systems with remarkable precision." Science Officer Tekla approached, her usual confident stride now hesitant. "Commander, I've completed my analysis of human military adaptation. It's unlike anything in our records. They're not just using their existing technology against us. They're creating new weapons specifically designed to counter our advantages." "How?" Xerix demanded, slamming a clawed hand on the console. "They're a primitive species. Their technology should be centuries behind ours. Their individual technologies may be primitive," Tekla explained, "but their adaptive capabilities are extraordinary. They're not bound by doctrine or protocol. Each human military unit appears to have significant autonomy, allowing them to experiment and innovate in real time." The main display showed footage of human forces using modified electromagnetic weapons that could penetrate Vraxian armor, communication jammers that disrupted Vraxian battlefield coordination, and most alarming of all, captured Vraxian technology repurposed against its creators. "And there's more," Tekla continued. "The humans aren't just fighting us. They're studying us. Each encounter, each captured soldier or piece of equipment, provides them with more data. They're learning at an exponential rate." Communications Officer Vren interrupted. "Commander, we're receiving a transmission from the Human Global Command. They're broadcasting on our primary frequency." Xerix hesitated, then nodded. On screen, the holographic display shifted to show General Chen again, this time standing in what appeared to be a command center. Behind her, screens displayed Vraxian ship positions and troop movements with alarming accuracy. "Commander Xerix," she began, addressing him by name, a detail that sent a chill through the bridge crew. Your invasion has failed. Your remaining forces are surrounded. We are prepared to destroy every Vraxian soldier and ship that remains in Earth's orbit. She paused, her expression hard but controlled. However, we are also prepared to offer terms. Terms? Xerex repeated incredulously. Conquered species do not offer terms to the Vraxian Empire. We are not conquered, Chen replied simply. And you are not in a position to demand anything. But unlike you, we understand that not all conflicts must end in extinction. The camera panned to show a group of captured Vraxian soldiers, unharmed and being treated for injuries by human medical personnel. These are your people, Chen continued. They have been treated according to our laws of warfare, laws your empire clearly lacks. They will be returned to you as part of our terms. Xerex felt something unfamiliar, a mixture of confusion and reluctant respect. The humans had every reason to execute Vraxian prisoners, yet they were treating them with care. It defied all understanding of interspecies conflict. What are your terms? He asked finally. First, immediate withdrawal of all Vraxian forces from Earth and our solar system, Chen stated. Second, a formal acknowledgement that Earth is not and will never be subject to Vraxian authority. Third, a non-aggression pact guaranteeing that the Vraxian Empire will never again threaten humanity. Krex stepped forward, his voice low but urgent. Commander, accepting terms from a species we attempted to conquer would be unprecedented. The High Command would never. The High Command isn't here, Xerex interrupted. They haven't seen what these humans are capable of. He turned back to the display. And if we refuse your terms? Chen's expression remained impassive. Then we will continue until no Vraxian remains in our solar system. We've analyzed your ship designs. We know your vulnerabilities. We've already developed weapons specifically designed to exploit them. To demonstrate her point, the display split to show a Vraxian scout ship under attack from modified human weapons. The ship's shields fluctuated and failed under precisely targeted fire. That was an unmanned demonstration, Chen explained. The next won't be. Xerex felt the weight of 17 successful conquests pressing on him. The proud history of the Vraxian Empire that had never known defeat, and yet the evidence was undeniable. These humans, in 2 short weeks, had accomplished what no species had ever managed. They had not just resisted the Vraxian conquest protocol. They had turned it against its creators. I need time to consult with my officers, Xerex said finally. You have 6 Earth hours, Chen replied before the transmission ended. In the silence that followed, the bridge crew looked to Xerex, waiting for guidance. For the first time in his career, he had none to offer. Science Officer Tekla, he said finally. You've studied these humans more than anyone. What happens if we continue to fight? Tekla hesitated, then spoke with clinical precision. Based on current adaptation rates, the humans will continue to improve their countermeasures against our technology. More importantly, they're now studying offensive capabilities. Within days, they could potentially develop weapons capable of pursuing our ships beyond their solar system. That's impossible, Krex objected. No species develops that quickly. No species we've encountered before, Tekla corrected. But these humans... She paused, searching for words. Commander, they don't just adapt to survive. They adapt to win. The death of that child didn't break them. It unified them in ways our conquest doctrine never accounted for. Xerex moved to the tactical display, studying the deteriorating Vraxian positions. The humans weren't just fighting defensively anymore. They were systematically dismantling the Vraxian invasion force with increasing efficiency. Show me the archived footage, he ordered suddenly. The incident that started this. The display shifted to show the educational facility in New Harbor. The moment when the Vraxian soldier fired on the human child played out again. But this time, Xerex watched not the child, but the reactions of the other humans. Their expressions weren't just of fear. There was something else, something the Vraxian conquest doctrine had never accounted for. Protective rage. We fundamentally misunderstood them, he said quietly. Our entire conquest strategy is based on the assumption that fear leads to submission. But for these humans, fear leads to unity, Tekla finished, and harm to their young leads to a rage that overrides fear entirely. Xerxes made his decision. Prepare the fleet for withdrawal. We will accept the human terms. Commander, Krex objected, his voice sharp with disbelief. The Empire has never retreated, never surrendered. The Empire has never faced a species like this, Xerxes replied firmly. If we continue this fight, we won't just lose our invasion force. We'll lead the Empire into a war it cannot win. 6 hours later, Xerxes faced General Chen again on a holographic display. Behind him stood his senior officers, their expressions tense but resigned. The Vraxian Empire accepts your terms, Xerxes stated formally. We will withdraw all forces from your solar system immediately. Chen nodded. Your prisoners will be transported to these coordinates. She transmitted the location data. Once all Vraxian ships have left our solar system, they will be released. Xerxes hesitated, then asked the question that had been troubling him since the humans' unexpected resistance began. Why? Why offer terms at all? Why not destroy us completely after what we did? Chen's expression softened slightly, not in weakness, but in a complexity of emotion that Xerxes couldn't fully comprehend. Because that's the difference between us, Commander. You came to our world ready to subjugate or exterminate. We fight to protect, not to conquer. Your soldiers killed our children, but we won't become what we hate to defeat you. As the transmission ended, Xerxes turned to Tekla. Include everything in the report to High Command. Everything we've learned about the humans. Everything they've taught us. And what have they taught us, Commander? Tekla asked quietly. Xerxes looked at the blue planet on the main display. This insignificant world that had dealt the Vraxian Empire its first defeat in centuries of expansion. That fear is not the most powerful force in the universe, he replied, and that any species that harms a human child has fundamentally misunderstood what humanity is capable of. As the Vraxian fleet began its withdrawal from Earth orbit, Xerxes knew that the Empire's conquest doctrine would need to be entirely rewritten, not just for tactical reasons, but because they had encountered something unprecedented, a species that responded to aggression not with submission, but with unified resistance and terrible effectiveness. In the centuries of Vraxian expansion, conquered world had always been followed by a designation number. But Earth would bear a different title in Vraxian.